somber, measured tone. In 1994, a footballer scored a goal that ended his career. Pause. 10 days later, it ended his life. Pause. This is not a story FIFA puts in highlight reels, but it's one of the realest stories football has ever produced. The World Cup gives us magic, miracles, and history. But behind the trophy lifts and the fireworks, there's a darker side this tournament rarely talks about. These are the most heartbreaking World Cup stories almost no one tells, and why they matter more than ever heading into 2026. Narrative building. Let's start in Brazil, 1950. Brazil didn't just need to win the final, they only needed a draw against Uruguay to lift the trophy in their own brand new stadium, the Maracanazo, in front of roughly 200,000 people, the largest crowd to ever watch a football match. Newspapers had already printed "Brazil World Champions" before kickoff. Pause. Then Uruguay scored twice in the second half and won, 2-1. Pause, wait. The stadium fell into complete silence. Historians later called it the Maracanazo, and some say the loss was so devastating to the national psyche that Brazil's goalkeeper, Moacir Barbosa, was blamed for decades afterward, never fully forgiven by his own country for a game he didn't lose alone. Shift to 1994, careful tone. Now to 1994 in the United States. Colombia arrived as one of the tournament favorites after a stunning 5-0 win over Argentina in qualifying. In their second group match against the host nation, a Colombian defender named Andrés Escobar, a calm, respected player nicknamed the Gentleman of Football, reached to block a cross and accidentally deflected the ball into his own net. Colombia lost and were eliminated. Quiet, respectful. 10 days later, back home in Medellin, Escobar was confronted outside a nightclub and shot 6 times. He was 27 years old. Pause. The tragedy exposed something darker than football, the dangerous grip that gambling and organized crime held over the sport in Colombia at the time. Escobar had written a newspaper column right after the tournament, asking people to stay positive and move forward together. Pause. It was published after he died. Tone shift, reflective. Then there's heartbreak of a different kind, the kind built slowly, match after match, decade after decade. England has lost a World Cup match on penalties 7 separate times since 1990. It started in the 1990 semi-final against West Germany, 4-3 on penalties, a result so painful it's still replayed in English football culture today. That single shootout helped define an entire generation's relationship with the tournament, a quiet, repeating heartbreak with no single villain, just 11 different ways for the story to end the same way. Building tension, and then 2014, Brazil hosting the World Cup for the first time since that 1950 final. The country built an entire tournament around healing 64 years of hurt. Pause. Then in the semi-final, Germany scored 5 goals in 18 minutes. The final score was 7-1. Pause. Soft cameras caught grown men in the crowd crying silently, not shouting, not protesting, just crying. It became known simply as the Mineirazo, a second national wound, in the exact same place the first one never fully healed. Lighter pacing, informative. A few details that rarely make the highlight reels. Moacir Barbosa was never invited back to Brazil's national team setup for the rest of his life, despite never officially being blamed by any investigation. Andrés Escobar's funeral in Medellin drew over 120,000 mourners, more people than attended Colombia's actual World Cup matches. And England's 1990 shootout loss happened in the same tournament where Paul Gascoigne's tears after being booked in the semi-final became one of the most replayed images in English football history. Heartbreak before the heartbreak even arrived. Closing reflection, sincere. These stories matter because the World Cup isn't just a sporting event. It's a mirror held up to entire nations. A missed penalty becomes a national wound. A deflection becomes a tragedy that outlives the player. A scoreline becomes shorthand for grief that an entire country still understands instantly, decades later. As we head into the biggest World Cup ever in 2026, with more teams, more matches, and more pressure than this tournament has ever carried, it's worth remembering that for every trophy lift, there's a story like these sitting quietly underneath it. Final, warm but restrained football is often called the beautiful game. But its history is also written in heartbreak, silence, and stories that never make it into the highlight reel. These are some of those stories, and they deserve to be remembered just as much as the goals. Gentle outro. If stories like this matter to you, hit subscribe. There's more hidden football history coming.